here and to everybody who's watching. We want to invite you, as we have before, to our website to provide feedback to for the finalists. For those of you who are watching and want to provide feedback, the board will receive your feedback prior to making our decision. The way that you will provide that feedback is by going to the superintendent search page, which is found on our website, and then finding the QR code to be able to ask those questions or add that feedback. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I'd like to introduce my fellow board members who are joining me today for this interview. I will start with Board Member Arguello from District 3, Board Member Melendez from District 2, Vice Chair Booth from District 5, and Board Member Cahoon from District 4. I am Terry Castillo from District 1. For this process, you will have 90 minutes for your interview today. We will start the 90 minutes with 3 minutes of your opening statement. After that, each board member will ask a series of questions, and those questions are all related to our strategic plan. As board members, we have 15 minutes, and we have prepared about 4 to 5 questions. However, you may receive less questions depending on how long it takes you to answer these, and that's okay. You will also have some time to give us a concluding statement or to ask any additional questions of the board. In addition to that, most board members have had additional questions asked depending on how much time we have left. So if we have some time left and we want to follow up on some of the things that you have said today, we may ask you some additional questions, so just be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Of course, and with that, we'll start with your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chair Castillo, Vice Chair Booth, Member Arguello, Member Melendez, Member Cahoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in Osceola County, have the opportunity to see all the wonderful things that Osceola County Schools has to offer. It has been a wonderful day. I've enjoyed my visits to not just the schools, but also the transportation headquarters. It was wonderful to interact with our school leaders, interact with our operational leaders, so I thank you very much for that opportunity. My name is Mark Shanoff. I currently serve as the Chief Information Officer for Orange County Public Schools, just up the road. I am a dad, first and foremost, and I have a beautiful 12-year-old daughter that I co-parent with my ex-wife and her husband. We have a wonderful, wonderful 3-parent working relationship for the betterment of our daughter. We spend all the major holidays together, and it's been really great to see just how many people love my daughter. So my daughter, I was going to bring her today. Today was her first day of camp, and I figured that the last thing we needed was an unhappy camper in the room, so decided that maybe she was going to go off to camp. She did give me some advice yesterday, though, and she did tell me. She said, "Dad, say your name clearly and tell them how wonderful I am." She is wonderful. I love her very much, and everything I do for her. But I also do it for everybody else's child as well, because everybody else's child matters to me, and every child is special to somebody. And I think that that's an important tenet of the next superintendent here in Osceola County Schools. A little bit about my background. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., and I like to say that I was a HB1 kid before HB1, and public school was not working for me. So after 6th grade, my parents took me out of public school, and they put me in private school, where I spent the next 6 years. Over the course of the next 6 years, I started to experience, over the course of the next 3 years, I started to experience some major challenges I hadn't experienced before. Got to the point where it wasn't just about me not being able to be successful in school, but me really starting to experience a lot of self-doubt. So from that, my parents did go ahead and get me tested, and yes, I do have specific learning disabilities. I have visual and auditory processing that I've had to work through, and I've had to learn new techniques to process what I see and what I hear. I was able to go to college. I went to Rollins College.
Hey.
And got my bachelor's in elementary education. I taught at Little River Elementary. I taught PE 3rd grade, 5th grade. I was an instructional coach, then became assistant principal at Ivy Lane Elementary downtown, an F school. We were able to move our F school to a C in 1 year and then a B in another year. And at that time, I was then moved to my first principalship at Dillard Street Elementary in Winter Garden, where I spent 5 years. I then was offered the opportunity to go to Ocoee Middle School, an Apple Distinguished School, State Demonstration School for Technology, and I spent 3 glorious years at Ocoee Middle School. And then the opportunity presented itself to embark on a high school principalship, where I spent 5 years at Edgewater High School in downtown Orlando. Then I had the superintendent in Volusia County, who's a former Osceola employee. He called me and he asked me to interview for the chief operating officer position, knowing full well that I had an MBA that I had earned while I was an assistant principal. And so I had always had a passion for that, and so I enjoyed my time in operations, specifically connecting operations to academics. I wanted to get a little bit closer to home, especially with my daughter starting middle school, and I came back to Orange County, first as Senior Executive Director of Information Technology Services. When Robert Curran, who is also a former Osceola County employee, passed away, I assumed his role as Chief Information Officer, where I've spent this year. It's been a wonderful experience, and I believe that I bring a unique skill set to this process. And I look forward to talking through the strategic plan with you today.
Thank you. So the first set of questions will come from me. And my first question is specifically regarding the academic success part of the strategic plan. So, high performance by students and accountability are priorities for the board. How would you assess the current student performance levels in our schools? And how would you assess the effectiveness of our teachers and programs?
So I think that there's a triangulated way to look at academic achievement. I think you look at the highly effective instruction. You look at the efficacy of the conditions and strategies that teachers are using. And then you also look at the leadership. And so I think that you triangulate those three things to determine how well you are achieving. In looking at Osceola County's data and looking at the data that is publicly available from 21-22, I'm looking at 9 out of 11 categories fall below the 50th percentile in achievement. And so, and what we're looking at specifically is achievement learning gains, lowest 25% proficiency in ELA and math, and then also looking at acceleration points, grad rate, and science, of course. So with all of that, I think it's important for us to take a deep dive on the types of instructional strategies that we're using, the materials that we're coupling with those instructional strategies, and really trying to go at a root cause analysis as to what is keeping our students from moving that needle in achievement. I think that there are a few things that you can look back on and be able to say that, all right, we're not doing what we need to do, and we're not getting the gains that we need to gain. And I do believe that the talent actually resides here, that the teachers who can get the job done actually are here in Osceola County. We don't need to look outside for that. The leaders to get us across the finish line already reside here. We don't have to look outside for that. I think what we need to do, though, is we need to take a deep dive and do that root cause analysis on the strategies that we're using, what those supports are that we are providing behind those strategies, those instructional strategies, and really kind of see where are we missing the boat? What is the missing piece? And if something isn't working, change it. If something isn't working, you don't need to keep doing it. You need to figure out what it is and then figure out a suitable replacement for whatever that is. And then you track it. And I do believe that there are opportunities for us to do quite a bit of predictive analytics around correlations between specific strategies, specific programs, specific leadership behaviors, and achievement, and then really try to tie those together. And I believe that that's one of the best ways that staff can really support our schools.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question with regards to this, which means that I may not ask you all the questions I have for my strategic plan. So you mentioned in your answer that you believe that the staff, the teachers that will bring us to the next level are already here in Osceola. So my question to you is, if they are here right now, what do you think has been standing in their way?
So I think that there are a few things that have been standing in their way. I think that we have some other things that may be outside the teacher's control that we need to address. One of those things is attendance. Obviously, you can't learn if you're not here. And if we have 26,000 students that are chronically absent, according to the data that I reviewed from the state from 21 and 22, then we're talking about a significant chunk of our students that are missing instruction. I came from a school this afternoon where I was very impressed by what the principal had done to really rein in tardies. Because what happens when a student shows up tardy is that they end up missing instruction. I believe that if you can actually get a student in front of a teacher, the learning can occur. But part of it is we've got to make sure that the kids get there. And if the kids are not there, what types of wraparound services are we providing to families to ensure that the kids do get there on time? That, to me, is not the responsibility of the teacher. That is the responsibility of the school district. The other thing is, I know that this has been a barrier for school districts nationwide, and that is discipline. And I do think that discipline has gotten in the way of teachers feeling as though they've been successful with our students. And so I think it's important for us to do a better job listening to our teachers and do a better job of listening to our principals about what those behaviors do in terms of impacting the learning of not just that student, but everybody else. And so I think we end up missing something in the discipline conversation, where what are the impacts on the learning of other students as a result of a teacher having to turn and address one particular student. Not to say that we need to remove that student, but I think that we also need to look at what are some of the root causes for the behaviors. And so the root causes of the behaviors really do require us to communicate with parents. And we need to do a better job of communicating directly with parents about behaviors before it becomes too late. We've got to engage the parents at the earliest possible level because the parents are sending us the very best students that they have. And we want to make sure that we also support those parents in everything that they need to follow up to make their kids successful. And we'll do what it takes in order to get those kids to where they need to be, but we need the parent participation with it.
Thank you. The next question is surrounding talent management. How would you measure staff's performance how have you measured staff's performance? And how has that resulted in improved performance? I can speak, I promise.
So I believe that every teacher, let me start with instructional and then I'll talk about others. I believe that every teacher comes with a skill set. And do I believe that every teacher has all the answers? No, I do not. Just like I don't believe that any working group, any collaboration, any one person has all the answers. In fact, I believe that the collective efficacy of the group and the group think actually does move the needle forward. For me, I look at a couple things. I do believe that there is a correlation between the amount of collaboration that takes place between a team and the results that they get. Because I believe at that point, during that calibration, or excuse me, during that collaboration, you do get calibration on how things are to be taught, how things have been successfully taught in the past, what strategies have not worked, and then really taking, it really becomes a quality control in what type of instructional delivery you're providing to students. So to me, I measure I measure the instructional staff based on their data, but I do believe that the data is a direct result on their collaboration. As for district teams have a responsibility to the macro data. And if the macro data is not aligning with the strategies that we're bringing to the classroom and down to the classroom level, then something's broken. And again, we need to look at that root cause analysis. But I do believe that everybody should be held accountable to their data, whether it's on-time arrival for transportation, or it's how many meals have been served for food and nutrition services, all the way to the classroom, where our students have to be learning at higher levels than they are right now.
Thank you. Your next question is surrounding safety and security. How do you ensure that climate assessment results are used in school improvement plans across the district?
I think that this ties back to talent management. I think that this ties back to retention of talent within the organization. If people do not feel safe, if they don't feel safe, they typically don't feel supported either. So for me, I actually think that we need to take that data and we need to look at it through a couple of different lenses. We need to look through it, we need to look through a safety and security lens, no doubt about it. And we need to take that feedback and we need to look at it as a cabinet. We don't need to bury it with our safety and security team and ask them to develop some sort of reactionary plan to that data. I actually think that, quite honestly, I do believe that safety and security should be on cabinet and safety and security should be reporting directly to the superintendent. That's my belief. But I do believe that school climate survey will drive a lot of what we do relative to retention of employees. And as far as retention goes, we need to make sure that our touch points don't just stop after we've signed a teacher to a contract. Our HR department needs to come behind that and spot check in on our teachers to make sure that they do feel safe and supported along the way. And if there are things that need to be shared across department, we need to be able to share that across department at the cabinet level, which is why I think elevating safety and security to cabinet is that much more important.
Thank you. My next question is surrounding fiscal responsibility. How would you prioritize additions or cuts to the budget?
So for me, it's about our core business, right? So we've got to really look at what are the priorities as an organization. What's our bottom line? Our bottom line is student achievement. We have to be sure that we are prioritizing student achievement and prioritizing our employees and retention of those employees when we look at either enhancements or cuts. I've worked on both sides of the house. I've worked on the business side and I've worked on the instructional side. I know what the impact is on the business side and I know what the impact is when you make cuts on the instructional side. And I do believe that there is some give and take. But at the end of the day, if we can find efficiencies on the business side, and I can assure you, we can find efficiencies on the business side. There is no doubt about it. Even the time that I spent in Volusia, even though we made significant strides in the amount of savings and owner direct purchasing and cost avoidance through procurement, even though we were able to save tens of millions of dollars, how can we be sure that that actually translates over here? And we can go ahead and we can set aside some of that money to make sure that even though there may be cuts over here, we're prioritizing our core business.
Do I have time?
You have 2 minutes.
Have a follow-up question. Thank you for answering. You did. I do want to hone in a little bit on prioritizing additions versus cost cuts. So how would you prioritize adding programs based on our budget?
So again, I think it comes back to where can we see the greatest gains in academic achievement? And I do believe that that requires a significant amount of study before we allocate resources to that. And so let me kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive. I know that we're almost out of time, but let me try to attempt to do this. We have got to look at the prevailing materials and programs that we are using right now, for which we are not getting the return on investment. We talk about academic ROI. It sits in the strategic plan. We talk about AROI and we have BROI. And we've got to make sure that no matter what we're doing, we are prioritizing academic return of investment. Do we have wasteful programs that are sitting out there simply because they're legacy programs? We have to be able to look at that and be able to say, this is not working. Or maybe it would work better if we made this change or that change. So for me, I'm going to prioritize additions based on what our principals are telling us, but then also what is going to provide us the best AORI.
Thank you. Mr. Melendez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, they may use different acronyms, but what are your thoughts on III time, or essentially the intervention time? You know, how does the district set aside time to catch up students who are left behind academically that need to catch up on past materials?
So there's a couple of concerns there, and I want to tie it back to Chair Castillo's last question about additions. III time is only as meaningful as the gains that are made by students who can actually get out of Tier 3 intervention back into a Tier 2. So are we making up the gaps during Tier 3 intervention time? We can put it into the schedule. But if we're not utilizing the appropriate tools or the appropriate strategies to make sure that the kids are actually improving, then I think that there are struggles there. To that, I would like to say that I think we're cross-utilizing a lot of folks in schools to do III work when we're also asking them to do, say, professional development. We're asking them to kind of do 7 or 8 different things, and when we ask them to do 7 or 8 different things, they really are not able to do all of them well because we just haven't put them in a position to do that. So if we talk about additions, maybe we need to talk specifically about what intervention looks like, what that III time looks like. Because in those categories, when I told you that 9 out of 11 are currently sitting below the 50th percentile, I think it's important for us to say that it's the lowest 25% where we're really, really struggling. And we've got to make sure that we're prioritizing those students. So I do believe that if we are going to look at any addition, it would be a reallocation of, it would be an allocation of resources around that bottom 25%, around things that are proven to work.
Correct. Our teacher salaries are generally fixated by the state, as far as, steps and things of that nature. But however, we have much more flexibility on non-instructional positions. And so how would you look at relooking at our administrative schedule, the non-instructional schedules? I know we have issues with pay, compression, equity, level of responsibility. What is your take on handling that side of the HR fence, which isn't instructional, but things that you can control on how you promote folks?
So there's I believe that everybody deserves a pathway towards improvement, towards acceleration in their career. And I believe that the organization has an obligation to provide those pathways. Whether that means creating time for them to go and achieve another certification, whether that means bringing them in for a comprehensive management leadership academy to really move those folks out of, say, technician positions into more supervisory roles. I think that that's something that we need to do. I get it. I understand that the reason why people are leaving the non-instructional positions is a lot about salary, and I think a lot of that has to do with, I think a lot of that is in some of our bargain positions, not necessarily administrative. But I also recognize that in positions like IT, you're up against some pretty heavy hitters that are paying pretty substantial wages. And so, again, I think that there's two things that you need to do, Mr. Melendez. I do believe that you need to address the compression issue. There's no doubt about it. We need to address the compression issue. We have to make it more desirable for folks to want to move into higher levels. We want to make it more desirable to pay folks additionally for the additional certifications that they have. But I think we also want to look at how do we retain folks. I think this is another thing where, again, I do believe that salary is important, but are we creating the right working conditions by which they want to stay with the organization? And at the end of the day, I believe that that requires further study, and they require more touch points than they're currently getting after they're hired.
Thank you. For safety and security, what are your thoughts on the use of school guardians versus SROs? And what do you think about the possibility of the district standing up its own force?
So thank you for that question. I actually have experience working in a district that has been a hybrid. In Volusia, there were school guardians at elementary schools, and then there were SROs in middle and high schools. And I've been in Orange County where we've had SROs through the law enforcement agencies. I believe that at the end of the day, our kids need protection. And I also believe that there is something to the relationship, no matter if it's the guardian or the SRO, and how that person interacts with the school staff. And I've seen it work both ways. So do I believe that school guardians could be just as effective as SROs? I believe that there's a pathway for school guardians to be in our schools. Absolutely, because I've seen it work. I do believe that SROs provide a very good service, and I do believe that it's important for us to maintain a great working relationship with our municipal police departments, and then also, of course, the sheriff's office. As far as standing up our own police force, it is a multi-year process to stand up a police force. There are significant benefits to standing up a police force, including intelligence sharing. I think that becomes the primary driver, and then also being able to go ahead and manage the SRO program at our own schools. That does require further study. I really believe that that's something where you want to look at how that implementation has taken place in specific size districts. I think we'd want to look at what it looks like in a district our size, not necessarily a district of Orange's size, Hillsborough size, or Miami-Dade size, and really see how that implementation went. At the end of the day, is it more money? And are we getting the same level of service and the same level of safety and security coming from a Guardian program or an SRO program? And is the information sharing, the intelligence gathering, is that a need? And if it is a need, then we need to address it.
Thank you. Currently, our school district has its own health clinic that we manage, and we are self-insured. How can we further reform our healthcare model, not only to provide quality care to our patients or to our staff, but also reduce the costs, which would help them in their pocketbook as well?
I wish that I could snap my fingers and drive down healthcare costs. Unfortunately, this is a sad reality that we are facing increasing healthcare costs. I think that there's a few things that we can do. And obviously being self-insured makes it even more difficult when you see healthcare costs begin to go through the roof. I think that we really need to focus on employee wellness, and we need to be more intentional and more proactive about what types of programs we are providing folks that will lend them to a more healthy lifestyle. And in some cases, I get it, but I get it that there are some folks that are never going to go to the gym, or don't have time to go to the gym. Or they have multiple jobs, and so you can't just say, well, you get a free gym membership, and that's how we're going to solve the health insurance issues here. I think it actually is. It's much more around the education, but also doing that routine checkup, that routine maintenance, and incentivizing folks going in and getting that routine checkup and that routine blood work. And I think for us, that will help us manage those costs a little bit better, because then we can ensure that folks are going in and they are getting the health care that they need from a physician, and they can at least be better informed about the choices for their own health care.
What are your thoughts on using, committees, or focus groups for like different aspects of the school district, a strategic plan, however it could be? It could be healthcare, it could be safety and security, but composed of the staff and communities equally. And if they made any recommendations, would you be willing to incorporate that into the plan? Not just, dog and pony show, so to speak, but are you willing to make course corrections?
So, first of all, to the idea that we bring in multiple stakeholders to discuss anything, I think always speaks to the health of the organization. Empowering community members, parents, employees is good no matter what you do. When decisions have to be made, the board will have to make those decisions, and then the superintendent will carry out those decisions. I think that as it stands, for community committees or community/employee committees to make those recommendations known, I think it would be very important for us to first kind of create the framework of what the financial picture is. So then it isn't just starting with a blank check. It's we'll have this and we'll have this and we'll have this and let's drive down the cost here. But I do believe that it's important for us to determine what are the value drivers in a healthcare plan for our employees. And to be honest with you, if there are members of the community that really have they have a background in this, I think it's really important for us to tap into that potential within the community and be able to engage them in this process. Because number one, they're taxpayers, these are their dollars. But the other piece is that they have expertise in this field. And I think it's important for us to be able to tap into that, even though we may be working with a consultant who will help shepherd this process for us as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Shanoff, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Arguello.
So, by and large, my skepticism of the public school system, the delivery system, has become very skeptical. It's one of the few industries where 50% is a success story. For people like myself who are not willing to pretend that 50% is acceptable in any way, shape, or form, certainly, I have a daughter around your daughter's age. If she came back with a 50% in any level of proficiency on anything, I would be heartbroken by it. So for people like me who that that is not a good metric of success, what metric or what proficiency level do you think is acceptable, and how can the public of Osceola County depend on the fact that you are going to have high standards for academic achievement in this county?
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it because I had a school leader tell me when I was in school that there's nothing wrong with a gentleman's C. And my mother fought back on that big time. And I will never accept mediocrity for anybody's child. And 50% to me is not acceptable. It's not a level of acceptable proficiency. The only acceptable proficiency and the only thing that we could ever work towards is 100% proficiency. You don't remain in this business unless you are working towards an end that you may never get to, but you will work your tail off to make sure that as many students as you can get to that point. And so from a more strategic point of view, though, Mr. Arguello, and I really appreciate the question because it's one of those things that really does burn inside me and has burned inside me since high school. We need to work backwards from what is expected of our students when they leave our schools. We need to start with the end in mind and work backwards. And what we don't need to be saying is we don't need to be saying that, okay, well, first graders on a first grade level. Okay, that's great, but let's go ahead and let's start looking at students in terms of what grad ready looks like. Because I still think that we have students that are supposedly on grade level, getting their way all the way through middle school, and then we're somehow still missing the mark between there and graduation. To nobody's fault. I'm just saying that we're missing the mark, that for whatever reason, we're somehow losing those students. So I think we need to, number one, I'm going to say, and it's not hyperbolic, it is 100%, and anybody who doesn't say 100% is not all in for all kids. But I will also say that we need to start with the end in mind and really be thinking about how are we going to best prepare kids for where they are going to go. Do I accept the graduation rate where it currently is? Absolutely not. I believe that the graduation rate, anything less than 100 means that we did not meet the needs of certain kids. And that's how I operated as a high school principal. That's how I'm going to operate as a superintendent. So you saw my graduation rate when I arrived at Edgewater High School. You saw my graduation rate when I left Edgewater High School. I was going to be fierce about making sure that my kids crossed the stage and had a plan. And that's what we need to work backwards from. Because I can walk into a kindergarten class and be able to really have a good idea of who's on trajectory to get where they need to be and not be retained in third grade. We can see that. And then ninth grade, sixth grade, you can see the same thing. Ninth grade, you can definitely see the same thing. So I'll tell you that the most transformative piece that I did was I met with every cadre of students after the first semester, at the semester iteration. So at the end of the first semester and then at the end of the year. If you were below a 2.0, you had to meet with me. If you did not have all your grad credentials ready, if you didn't have your SAT score, or your SAT concordance score, or you didn't have your ELA score that you needed, you were going to meet with me. And we were going to come up with a plan for you, because you were going to get there. And that's the type of accountability that we need to have for our kids. And that's the accountability that the community needs to have in us, that we're going to make sure that those kids get across the stage ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In regards to graduation rate, which is more important, to have a high graduation rate or to have a graduation rate that more accurately reflects the number of students that have left your building with an actual diploma that describes the level of education that they've received?
Oh, I think that at the end of the day, a number is not what I'm in it for. I'm in it for the person that's crossing the stage, that I'm shaking their hand, and I'm asking them, what are you going to wake up and do tomorrow? What's your plan? Because everybody crossing the stage should have a plan. And that plan should be based on their interests and the level of training that they've received from Osceola County Schools. And for me, that's what it's about. So I would say the latter. I really want, a high grad rate is awesome. But I'll also tell you, Mr. Arguello, even though I had a 99% grad rate, to your point, I'm not exactly sure if I could say that 99% of the students that walked across the stage were ready to go into something that they were prepared to do. So to your point, it's definitely the latter, and it certainly caused me to look back on all the students that I worked with. I know most of them went off and did great things, but it's definitely something that we need to reframe around.
Thank you. Regarding talent management, Osceola County has not the best record when it comes to talent management. We have very low morale amongst our teachers. We have offended many of our veteran teachers. We make excuses for those who do not perform. We accept conflicts of interest. We cover things up instead of fixing them. Considering all of these things, how will you change that culture, that substandard culture here in Osceola County regarding talent management?
First thing is to listen. I need to listen. I need to hear it from the teachers. I really believe in flattening communication, so then I become much more accessible to folks. From there, we really need to look at codifying strategies that endear trust and respect from the superintendent through the cabinet, from the cabinet on down through the principals to teachers. And a lot of that has to do with making sure that I roll my sleeves up and I'm sitting side by side with those teachers and talking to them about their condition. Talk to me. Talk to me about what your day looks like. If you want to share what happens, what all the things that you miss out on as a result of having to do A, B, and C after school, tell me what that's like. I want to be able to really understand the teacher condition. And from the teacher condition, I really believe that as a district, we do need to make a shift because we are in a competitive landscape. And we don't want to see any more teacher attrition. Like I said at the onset, we have the talent here to move the needle on student achievement. All we need to do is make sure that we listen and we respond appropriately to what they are providing us in terms of feedback. And so if there are issues around distrust, if there are issues around low morale, I want to be able to head those off by making myself accessible to them. And again, flattening the organization so then the superintendent is among the teachers. I'm in it with them. I'm in it with our support staff. I'm riding on buses where bus drivers need my help because they've got an unruly group. I'm riding along with them. I want to make until I can get my CDL, and then maybe I'll drive them. But I want to make sure that I'm there for them and that they see me as a teacher's superintendent, as a principal's superintendent, as a support staff superintendent.
Regarding Section 3 of our strategic plan, would you recommend or would you want a deep financial audit before taking control?
So when I was in Volusia, I was actually part of that fiscal, the fiscal audit that was taking place through RSM, who I believe does some of your auditing as well. I believe that there's quite a few things that I would need to take a deep dive in and have some outside eyes look at. If there are specific things related to fiscal responsibility that, that the board wants to dive into, I'm certainly willing to work through those issues, so then we could go ahead and develop a strategy for financial health and financial responsibility moving forward. But I'm not exactly sure if I have that authority to order that audit. If it is within my authority, certainly that would be something that I would investigate, but I would need to be able to see, and maybe we could have a deeper conversation about any sort of mismanagement that you see that would be worth a deeper dive. And certainly at that point, we can go ahead and have a deeper conversation about it.
Okay, thank you. Regarding community engagement, the chief reason for community engagement is to build trust with families and who allow us to exist. And many of the opportunities to have true community engagement have been sullied by stacking committees and surrounding leadership positions with yes men, cronies, and loyalists. How will you surround yourself with the most talented people as opposed to those who tell you what you want to hear?
So, in every leadership position I've ever assumed, I've never replaced anybody at the top. And the reason why is because I don't need to bring in people that are going to tell me what I want to hear. I need to hear the truth. I think I know what questions to ask because I've sat on both sides. That I've spoken the language of the business side of the house, and I've spoken the language of the instructional side of the house. I know the questions to ask. And so I will not, I'll tell you, I'm pretty good at asking questions. I'm pretty good at challenging folks. Certainly I've challenged my folks wherever I've been to look beyond kind of what's normal and what's always been done, and look for some sort of breakthrough strategy. I take a much more entrepreneurial approach to leadership than most, because I do believe that sometimes disruptive innovation is really the way forward. Now, I'm not saying that, I want to come in and disrupt everything. What I'm saying is that it is okay for me to hear. In fact, I welcome contrarians. I welcome the contrarian point of view, because I believe that makes for a better experience and a better product in the long run. So I don't mind it. And I do believe I'm in a position to do that. Now, whether or not I'm stacking committees or, I'm creating committees or whoever is creating committees, for me, I just know that I want a breadth of opinion. I want a breadth of expertise that will go ahead and tackle some of the toughest challenges that we have. And I do want to hear from all perspectives. I'm not looking for a single perspective. That doesn't get us to a good end. What does get us to a good end is collective discussion, honest discussion around things that actually matter to the organization. And that's where I want us focused. And whoever can provide that best, that's who I want on committees.
What's more important to you, keeping the same people that are there, or having the best talent if those two things are mutually exclusive?
Repeat them again, I'm sorry.
Having the people that are there, not removing the people that are there, or having the best talent if those things are not mutually, if those things are mutually exclusive?
What?
1 minute to answer
Okay,
that question.
so I think that everybody wants the best talent, but again, I think that the other thing is that you have to figure out where people's strengths are, and I'm going to need some time to really understand where people's strengths are. I really need to be able to look at the skill set of the individuals that are here and be able to maximize their expertise as best I can. And if there is, if they haven't been used in their highest and best ways, or we haven't exclusively gotten, everything that we've wanted out of specific individuals or specific people, then it's up to us to really make sure that we take a deep dive and put them in a position to be successful. And sometimes that means being able to develop them. I mean, I got a chance to talk to Scott Noble today over at Transportation. Here's an elementary principal that is now your district operations chief. And so I'm really, really interested to kind of dive a little bit deeper because I took that same pathway. I'm really interested to kind of find out from him what got him to where he is, and then how do I develop him into the best COO that he could possibly be.
Thank you. Your next set of questions will come from Board Member Cahoon from District 4.
Okay.
I'm going to start with academic success as well. What strategies would you introduce to raise the test scores and reading levels of our lowest quartile students in all of our areas, high school, middle school, and elementary school? You did mention earlier that those are the students that are probably holding us back from going past that 50%.
They are, and I've had these discussions. Actually, I had these discussions with the principals today, and so I'm going to not necessarily go with what I've prepared, but I really want to go with what I've heard from the boots on the ground. So I know that the kids need more time. I know that they need more time. But they also need to get their intervention from folks that can provide that intervention better than anybody else. We need to have some really, really deep and rich conversations about the instructors that do the best work with raising our lowest performing kids. Now, not necessarily to go ahead and just say, well, that's all you're going to work with. But how have we kind of culled all of their strategies into a single area within the CUPs, where we can really see how we can differentiate with specific strategies for those students? And we do have teachers that are really good with our lowest performers, and we have teachers that are really good with our highest performers. They do a lot of really cool enrichment things. And then we have teachers that are really good with students in the middle. But I do think that as we talk about additions, I think we really need to talk about interventionists and what interventionists will do on our campuses. There is something to teachers, specifically interventionists, having caseloads of students and being able to work with those students on a daily basis, on a dedicated schedule, and be able to do that small group instruction that's going to get them where they need to be. May not make up all their growth in a year, but we will definitely put them on a trajectory where they're going to get to that point, definitely by the time, maybe it's 2 years. The other thing is that we need to look at what summer programs we have in place, so then we don't have any sort of summer slide. The lowest performing quartile is where you typically get your biggest slide. Ms. Cahoon, there's one other thing that I want to mention that I did at Edgewater High School that I thought kind of broke the mold on how we typically do things and where we got ourselves over that 50% hump for ELA achievement, which is really difficult to do when they get to high school. And that is, kids in your lowest 25% have been in the same classroom with the same kids since kindergarten. In many cases, the kids in the lowest 25% know their classmates better than they know their own family. They know that they're low performing. So what did we do? Took the lowest 25% and we put them in honors classes. Now, I was wondering how that was going to pan out. But one thing that we need to recognize is that honors classes have the same standards as the regular classes, just done at a different pace. When we realized that students in the lowest quartile could get multiple exposures, even though the pacing was much faster, they would get multiple exposure to the same standards. All of a sudden, we were able to close a lot of gaps very, very quickly. And an ancillary part of that was the idea that now all of a sudden they were in classes with kids that they didn't know. And it wasn't the usual suspects. And some kids said, I think you put me in the wrong class. I'm in an honors class. No, you're not. You're exactly where you need to be. You're exactly where you need to be. So that, to me, was one of those transformative things that kind of out of the box, but it moved data very, very quickly.
So I think my next one about talent management kind of goes to this because it talks about high expectations, and I think that was what you were pushing the students for there. What steps would you take to create a culture of high expectations for our employees?
So the first thing is that the superintendent needs to be very clear, and the superintendent needs to be out in front. And the superintendent needs to be able to communicate those expectations to staff. Staff want high expectations. And if they don't want high expectations, then they might not be a good fit for the organization. But while they're here, we're going to hold them to a standard because we don't have the benefit of time. Time is probably the most important commodity that we have, even more than money, because time never stops and the students continue to grow. So because of that, I really think that we need to be out in front, and I need to be able to convey that I will support you. I will support you, and I believe in you as long as you believe in our kids and what they are capable of doing. The moment that belief falls down, the moment that we no longer believe in our children, is the moment that I can no longer believe in you as a team member, because we are all about our children and we are all about believing in the success of our kids. And every kid deserves an opportunity. This is the great equalizer in our country. Education is the great equalizer. This is the promise that we have provided to every citizen in this country. And it is absolutely vital that our employees understand that we don't have a lot of time. We are all in this together, all for the betterment of students. And I will run through a wall for any employee that believes in our kids, because I believe in them.
Thank you. For safety and security, what have you found to be the most effective strategies to address student, social, emotional, or other non-academic challenges in collaboration with parents?
So there's a few things. So number one, engaging parents at all levels is critical to this. So, and parents want to be involved. We cannot do this on our own. Parents parents, number one, have to be involved. Number two, they absolutely should be involved. As a best practice, they should be involved. I think that our students are dealing with a lot of things right now, and I think that there's the real value for our students in school are the relationships that they foster with the folks on their campuses. We need to make sure that the existing embedded business process, or I don't want to say business processes, the processes that we have in place ensure that we have parent involvement, but we also circle back with those parents on the available services so then they can make the best decision for their particular child. But I also believe that we work in two different environments. We work in a physical environment where we're able to supervise children, and then we work in this virtual environment as well. And I think we need to be very upfront and honest with parents about what students are doing online and what that means. And I do think that the legislation that was just passed relative to cell phone usage during instructional time will go a long way towards really kind of calming things down during the school day, because it will remove students from the environment that for them, I think, is driving a lot of the social emotional hurt. And so, at least in Orange, what we've seen since we put an online student safety monitoring tool in place is that we have students that sometimes use the online environment to ask for help without actually asking for help. And so we have to make sure that we align our workflows to, number one, involve our parents in this process, and then number two, make sure that the kids get the help that they need with, of course, the parents' blessing.
Thank you. This next question on fiscal responsibility is multi-pronged, so I can re-ask any parts of it if you need me to do so.
Okay.
Think about a large, critical budgetary decision you've made in the past. What was the situation? Who did you involve? What analysis or information did you gather to support your decision-making process, and what was the impact of your decision?
Yeah, you're probably going to have to repeat that one. I got to like step 2 and then, yeah, sorry.
So large, critical budgetary
Yep.
decision you made in the past.
Yeah.
What was the situation and who did you involve? What analysis or information did you use to gather support of your decision? And what was the impact?
Over the last 2 years, Orange County has embarked on what I would consider to be the most aggressive student device refresh in K-12. And what we knew is that we had capital dollars to address what was an issue with an aging fleet of devices. We knew how important it was to get our students new devices because we were so heavily invested within this virtual learning environment. Okay, so students had Canvas course shells, and they were checking their grades on Skyward every day and the whole thing. So they needed reliable technology, but the technology was dying. So we needed a refresh, and we had devices that were sent home with kids during COVID, and they came back obviously in much worse condition than when they were sent home. They were kids. So we actually had to make the decision to move forward with that purchase, and that purchase actually came right after I came back on board with Orange County. So literally within the last year, we've had to go through a deployment of about 215,000 devices at a cost of about $100 million. And what we did was we determined that, number one, our repair costs for these devices that were aging were significant, particularly between years 3 and 5. So, and they go up exponentially in between year 4 and year 5. So we were looking at repair bills in the neighborhood of $8-9 million over the course of a year. That's significant. So we made the decision to go ahead and deploy middle and high school in year 1 because they were taking the devices home every day to and from school. And then we were going to do elementary and K-8 in year 2. We found that there were efficiencies in purchasing a single model of device rather than having multiple models because it would allow our repair contractor to curate one pool of parts. It's kind of like the Southwest Airlines model. They only need to stock 737 parts, right? Makes it a lot easier. And especially when part availability is not there. So for us, it was about presenting that to the superintendent, presenting it to the board, and then the board actually coming back and asking for us, because this was a capital project, to really look at how are we going to hold students accountable for them having those devices. And the board, we worked with the board very closely on developing a matrix for fee collection in the event that students had damaged their devices. What we also realized, though, is that when we took in, when we actually onboarded all these new devices, all the internal components were under warranty for 4 years. So the only thing we were paying for was any sort of negligent damage for which we were collecting device fees from the students in those particular cases. So We also made the decision to buy $1 million worth of cases for those devices. And so the impact this year in middle and high school, our repair costs dropped from, $6 million last year to $100,000. Significant savings. And so it also means that we had devices in the kids' hands. They weren't working off loaner devices or anything like that. They were working with their own device. Part of this process is students end up getting their same device back next year. So the kids in high school will have the same device with them for 4 years. So it's kind of like, okay, you start to take some ownership over that. So that was a critical budget decision, obviously a very large capital expense, and it's certainly paid dividends for us thus far. How are you, Ms. Payne? Good.
My question is going to be about academic success. And we talked about III, talked about different levels of students, but how will you ensure that all students, in particular, our highest level, achieve support in every school?
So we have some pretty aggressive, one of the schools I went to today, we have some pretty aggressive programs relative to AP and dual enrollment. And I do believe that AP and dual enrollment are great programs. I would like to see some expansion of dual enrollment and try to bring in even more options for our students. I do think that we do have students that have interests beyond what currently exists within the menu, and I think that we need to start to tailor to those requests from those students. I also think that it's important for us to really kind of take the idea of being smart and really kind of making that a much larger kind of marketing campaign about, making smart cool. I mean, we did it in Orange, and it was highly successful. The idea that it doesn't necessarily, our smartest kids, by the way, are not always the ones that are sitting in AP and in dual enrollment. They just haven't reached the appropriate challenge. And I think that if we start making smart cool, as teachers, we may start to, and principals, we may start to identify students that maybe have that potential, but maybe just because they don't look like it on paper, we don't provide them those opportunities. I do think that the pathways that we have for CTE are absolutely vital. I think we're missing something with our acceleration in high school. I think some of that may have to do with taking a really long look at some of the non-industry certification CTE courses that we're offering in high schools, and whether or not we're really getting any value out of that. I mean, what are the kids actually getting out of those courses? We want them to have some sort of credential. We want them to have some sort of certification. So we want to make sure that we really kind of push that. When high-performing students apply to college, a lot of it is you are what you are on paper, and we want to make sure that we are offering students advanced coursework at the earliest possible moment. So it's not just about taking algebra or showing that you've taken algebra in 7th grade on your transcript, but a lot of it has to do with what is the earliest point where you're starting to take an AP class. Have you really, are we offering AP in 9th grade? Are we offering that entry point into AP in 9th grade? And so where is that entry point into that advanced coursework? Where is that entry point into advanced CTE type courses where they can earn industry certifications? And so a lot of parents really want that for their kids. They want their students to have that really accelerated experience. We have to make sure that, again, that menu is broadened for students at some of our lowest levels, even going down to 6th, 7th grade, not necessarily giving them an advanced placement class, but we want to make sure that we're really giving them not just access to algebra or geometry, but some really, really high-quality pre-industry certification courses that they can receive and really kind of drive forward a pathway for them.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
More of a immediate need with our talent management, what would be your immediate plan for teacher, substitute, and bus driver recruitment?
So I received some good news today, transportation. I don't know if I'm allowed to report it in this setting. Maybe I'll just wait for them to do it. Just tell you. So I actually met the recruiter that they've hired in transportation. And he has shown me the data. He showed me the data up on his board of how many new folks that they've been able to onboard. And it's a net gain of 32, which I think is really impressive since he's come on board. And I'll let Mr. Creech go ahead and give you the bold prediction to you that, and you can ask him on the 13th to show up and give you that bold prediction. But I think that at the end of the day, again, we're in a competitive market. We recognize that, but I also think that we need to look at what these working conditions look like. And the one thing that I was so blown away by walking through transportation was just how positive everybody was, from the drivers in the lounge to the routers, to the dispatchers, to the mechanics, to the leadership, to even the folks that were there taking courses to just get their CDL. So people that were trying to onboard with their CDL. And I think that there are magical things that are occurring in this district, and I think that if we can really kind of hone in on the messaging around be part of this team and be part of the magic that we are providing for our community, be the transformation agent that you can be for our community, that is what this is about. You're not just joining an organization, you're joining a cause. You are joining a movement that is going to move kids to greater heights in this community, and they're our next generation of leaders. They're going to be, in 25 years, they're going to be sitting up on this dais. And we need to make sure that those folks are taken care of. And because of that, there is a place for our bus drivers. There is a place that, by the way, connects to students' mental health, that connects to their academic achievement, because if that kid doesn't get a smile getting on the school bus, then that may be the only interaction that they have over the course of the day. I've worked in a high school. Kids can walk through a high school day and never interact with anybody, never interact with an adult. That bus driver and that bus driver's interaction is absolutely vital to that student having a good day. Substitute, same thing. How do we make sure that we maintain instructional momentum? It's just as important for a substitute to be able to deliver that instructional momentum as it does the person that they're substituting for. Food service employees, there's nothing better than being able to serve a kid and have a kid just, say thank you, because again, you never know where their other interaction is going to take place. That's what I used to tell my operations team. This is how you impact student achievement. You interact with kids, even when maybe other people don't. And that will set them on a trajectory for academic success. And that's how you keep people, because they do feel connected to everything that's happening, just as if they were a teacher in the school building, or a principal leading a school, or a board member developing policy for the school district.
Thank you. Safety and security. What is your experience with emergency management plans and processes in a district?
So, obviously, working as head of operations in Volusia County, I became very, very familiar with working with our safety and security department there, as well as the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and all the municipal offices, and then, of course, working as a high school principal as a shelter during severe weather. There's obviously two things that we need to focus on. Obviously, being in Florida, converting our schools into shelters and standing up shelter operations was something I was responsible for, working directly with emergency management in Volusia County. We had regular meetings, we had regular walkthroughs, so I know exactly what questions to ask. I know what the setup is supposed to look like, and sure enough, Volusia County had to use all those plans that we had set up ahead of time this fall to operationalize shelters. The other piece is looking specifically at the school safety plans for each school. And where are our blind spots? Where do our schools need further hardening? These are things that, quite honestly, these are the things that should keep all of us up at night. Is any sort of concern, any sort of vulnerability that may exist within either planning or the actual physical plants themselves, and ensuring that we have done that walkthrough with law enforcement. We should be doing that walkthrough every single year with law enforcement, and then making sure that our plans are exactly airtight and that we practice what we need to practice with our students to what the state requires us to do, which I believe is a healthy amount. And I don't think you can ever practice these things enough, but having to go ahead and impose a lockdown at a high school, I know what needs to be done, and I know how it works, and I've seen it work flawlessly. And I think that we just need to make sure that we're airtight on that. Again, another reason why safety and security should be a cabinet level position reporting directly to the superintendent, because there's nothing more important than the safety and security of our kids.
How much time?
4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So my last question for right now. You touched on this a little before through all the other board member comments. What role or roles do you see parents playing in public schools? You already described the community program with the cell phone usage and social emotional health and learning, but what other roles do you see parents playing in public schools?
So only because I saw the impact. My parent was an involved parent before involved parents was a cool thing, okay? She was a Renaissance woman, no doubt about it. So I believe that parents have an extremely valuable partnership with what the school district does. And it goes beyond parent-teacher conferences. It really comes down to a real partnership in the direction of where we go as a community. We are responsible to the citizens of our community, including our parents. And while I believe that the school district is responsible for students in lieu of their parents being there during the day, there is absolutely nothing that should be taking place during a school day that a parent isn't fully aware of. And a parent should be able to ask for and receive anything related to their child or their child's experience. That is how you develop mutual respect, mutual understanding, and mutual trust. And so there's a very, very important place for parents at the table here. And I want to make sure that we are listening very closely and intently to our parents, that we are involving them every step of the way, and that when students cross the stage of graduation, it is because there has been a strong partnership between the school and the family to ensure that those students have been able to be successful with a plan when they cross the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly do appreciate you answering all those questions. So we have an additional 10 minutes for the interview. So at this point, we would invite you to ask any additional questions of the school board or give any additional comments that you were not able to include throughout this time. If there is time left, most of the other candidates have received additional questions, although you only have 10 minutes. So most people had 20.
We can give them
which
another
means-
5 minutes.
Which
Okay.
means, well, that
I have the
actually
gift for
means
gab, Chair Castillo.
So let's at least start with any questions that you may have for the board.
So I'd like to ask each of you question that I asked each one of the leaders that I got a chance to speak with today. What is the single greatest characteristic of this school district?
Who would you like to go first?
I know, I think it's good that we're all thinking
So-
though, that's good. I think I have mine, and then
Okay.
I'll pass it along to the next person.
Okay.
I think the single characteristics that sets us apart from other places is that we still think we are small, and we act as if we are a small district ourselves, people who live here, and hopefully you'll see a lot of our members come, we think that we are small, but we know, data shows that we are actually an emerging economy and an emerging school district, and so we think small, but we're emerging into a big economy and a big place. Next.
I'll go next. Mine actually touches on Terry's, I think. So I think community is a word I think of when I think of Osceola County, and that's probably because I am born and bred here practically. I think that we all value what each person brings to the table when it comes to Osceola County and how we can work together as a collective community to move us forward.
I'll be brief. I believe I've grown up here my whole life, born and raised here, educated through the Osceola County public system. I'd say our community is unique. We just celebrated the 100 rodeo this past weekend. We have cattle ranches to farming down south to Neo City next door. We share with the entertainment industry. We're just a very unique, eclectic group that is growing, let's say it that way.
Right, and I'll just kind of echo that too. It's eclectic, and the greatest part of that, and almost the challenge, is how do we create that new sense of community? As we transition from a small district to a middle district, what is that new identity? And I feel that people from Osceola County, kind of like to Ms. Booth's point, is we have the farmers to the Puerto Ricans to now a great amount of Venezuelans. I have a lot of Venezuelans that work at the restaurant, and so each one of them has that diverse ability to make Osceola County unique. So the next superintendent challenge is how do you harness that to provide that strategic vision and how to make them reach their highest potential?
I think that's plenty of a good start. Dr. Shanoff, I'd like to ask a question, if I may, really quickly, because I wanted to make sure I got it in.
Sure.
And I'll talk to you about my views on what our county is tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So we've had disconnects in between situations of reporting at our district. So I've asked every other candidate, I wanted to make sure I got this in for you. Would you commit to a third-party ombudsman for all sexual misconduct, fraud, waste, and abuse allegations to secure the safety of our students and our employees? Mostly because when we do an investigation in-house, it may not provide the community with the satisfaction they deserve.
I would commit to, so I don't know if a third-party ombudsman would be able to, would be any more successful, or I hate to use the term successful. I don't know if an ombudsman would be any more effective in this process as a thorough outside review of current procedure would be. And if there are concerns relative to the process and the procedure, then I think we need to attack that first. I really do want to look for solutions within before we start looking for solutions outside. Because if we have an embedded practice that doesn't meet the need, I'd like to go ahead and I'd like to solve that. And to be honest, Mr. Arguello, I don't think it's just that. I think that every organization has them, embedded practices. And these embedded practices may have been useful at one time, or they may have met the standard at one time, but no longer meet the standard. And so I think that there is a place for us to really kind of take a deeper dive on those things that are of concern. And I do think that part of that is looking internally at what we're doing before we look at whether or not an external solution is the solution. Thank you. Sure.
Real quick, I just want to make sure I ask the same question to everyone. This is a competitive process, and it's like every candidate has done well. Why should we choose you versus the other superintendents or superintendent candidates that have presented themselves to us? Why Dr. Shanoff?
Well, because I went last.
Let me take off points for a sense of humor here.
So, I do bring, first of all, let me just say that the candidates are phenomenal people, and they're great leaders. And I don't think that this district can go wrong with any of them. I've had the opportunity to meet them, interact with them. I've worked with Annie before. And I know them to be wonderful, honorable people that all want what's best for kids. For me, I came to apply to this position, and only this position, after 18 months of since my last Osceola visit, where I felt really connected to the teachers and the staff members and the leadership that I met on the tour of one of your schools. And from that moment on, I said that if this district ever opened up, I was going to apply. And I was not going to apply other places. I was asked to apply to other places. This place was unique. I have a unique skill set. I have a unique background. I have been a principal at all three levels. I can walk into a kindergarten class and I can speak the language of the kindergarten teacher and the kindergartners. I can allow them to go ahead and wipe their nose on my tie and not be worried about it, because I've lived that. I've been in a middle school. I can sit and talk turkey and talk content with a seventh grade civics teacher all day. I love it. I can go into a high school and I can have a conversation with an intensive reading teacher in one classroom and then turn around and have a conversation with an AP calculus teacher. Maybe that conversation doesn't go so well because I don't know what they're saying, but I could definitely tell if they are providing good instruction. I have worked on the business side. I have a business skill set that I've been able to apply successfully on the K-12 side. But then I wanted to make sure that, well, can I even do it on the business side? Or is it only successful when I take these business practices that I've learned and codified over time, can I do them successfully on the business side? And in Volusia, I was able to do that. Not only was I able to do that, but I was able to move the largest business entity in Volusia County, 1,700 employees and $600 million. And I was able to move them towards differentiated value propositions for each lane, aligning them to student achievement. They had never gone through that process before. They had never figured out where they actually connect. And so for me, That's what this was about. This is about being able to take an entire organization and align it around our exact vision and mission, which is around our children. So, whether it's IT, operations, or K-12, we can be aligned in one singular focus around what's best for kids. And that's the unique skill set that I bring. That's a conversation I can have with each one of our staff. No matter who they are and what department they're in, I know because I've lived it, and I've worked there, and I've led it. And so that's what makes me different.
Thank you, Dr. Shanoff.
Can I ask a
And
quick-
our time is up.
This is a one-word answer.
But-
Can I ask?
okay.
What school did you tour? That's the only thing I want to know. 18 months ago.
Oh, I toured Neo City.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest and for your participation in the process. So this is the end of day, well, no, it's actually the middle of day one, because we still have a very important interview with our community, as you heard.
Absolutely.
Our community is very involved in this process, so I hope you get ready for that. Thank you for attending the tours. As you know, tomorrow you will meet with us individually.
Yes.
And have some more one-on-one time with us. And if you do have any questions in the meantime, please go ahead and contact FSBA. They'll be able to help you with anything in the process. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea, where?
Please, if they're ready for
Oh,
the interview.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Arguello.